So along with if statements, a second fundamental way of altering the flow or the logic of your code is a loop. And we're going to look at two different types of loop. And the first one is the for loop. So loops are a little bit tricky to explain until you see them in action. And then they really are quite straightforward. Essentially, they allow you to run certain lines of code again and again, doing usually something slightly different each time. So let's see how we set up a for loop. We use the command for to start off our loop, and then we need to add some information for our for loop. And first off, we create a counter variable which counts each time we go through the loop. So we usually create that with var, and the standard letter that we use for counting is I. That's been used since the very early days of computing. It's likely because I is short for index. So it's the index which counts how many times we've gone through the loop. And then we set that value to something initially, and usually we start with 0. So we've created our counter variable I and we've set it equal to 0 so far. Then we use a semicolon, interestingly not to end the command, but just to end that little bit of it and give the next instruction, which is how many times we're going to do the loop. So if we want to do the loop 5 times, for example, we would keep on going as long as I is less than 5. So the first time I is going to be 0, then the next time it's going to be 1, next time it's going to be 2, next time it's going to be 3, then 4. So that will be our 5 times. So that's the instruction to keep going as long as I is less than 5. The final instruction, the third and final instruction, is what to do to I each time. And the usual thing is to add 1 to I. So it becomes 0, 1, 2, 3 each time you've gone through the loop. There are two ways to do that. The most kind of obvious way is to do that. So each time you go through the loop, take I and set it to the old value of I plus 1. So that essentially increments I each time. That's a bit wordy though, and we use it a lot in loops. So there's a shortcut way of doing it, which is I++, which is quite a neat way of saying just add 1 to I. And that works in pretty much every programming language. So it's a pretty cool thing to learn. All right, so now we've set up our loop. It starts off with our counter variable equal to 0. It adds 1 to our counter variable each time, and it keeps going as long as our counter variable is less than 5. So then we need to give the instructions of what we want to happen each time the loop takes place. And just like with functions, we do this in curly brackets. So the same as if statements as well. And for now, all we'll do is alert the value of I. So this should give us 0, and then 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then stop. With any luck. Let's take a look. So yep, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, stop. Brilliant. So that's the long and the short of it really. Let's just play around with it a little bit to get you thinking. If we change that to a 3 and that to a 7, can you tell me what this is going to alert? Go for it. Did you get it right? Let's see. So it starts at 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then stop, because it keeps going as long as it's less than 7. All right, here's a challenge for you. Can you change it so that it, instead of going up by 1 each time, it goes down by 1 each time, and we get 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go for it. Hope you managed that. So we're going to start with I is equal to 5. We want to keep going as long as I is greater than 0, because we want 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then stop. And instead of I++, hopefully you guessed this, to decrease by 1 each time, we use I minus minus. So this should give us 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Brilliant. All right, feel free to play around with that much more and see if you can find different ways of doing things. But I'm actually going to combine for loops and arrays because they are really a match made in heaven. Going back to our example when we introduced arrays of tweets, if we want to display all the tweets and we don't know how many there are, what we're going to need to do is loop through the array. So we start with the first tweet, display that, move on to the second tweet, display that, etc., etc. And that's actually really easy to do with loops. So let's set up our array of tweets. I can't even remember what my inane tweets were last time. Something like this. I love cornflakes, and we'll have one more. Let's say it's night night and a smiley face. Lovely. I quite like this guy. All right. So I'm going to set this as a challenge then. Can you display or alert each of the values in this tweets array using the loop? Go for it. Okay, hope you managed it. All we need to do is set I back to 0 at the beginning. And we want to keep going. So remember, this is the 0th tweet. This is tweet number 1. And this is tweet number 2. So we want to keep going as long as I is less than 3. Because we want I to be 0, 1, 2, and then stop. And of course, we want I to go up by 1 each time. So I'll change that back to I++. And then we're going to alert tweets. But which item do we want? We want the ith item. So this will be tweets 0 the first time round, tweets 1 the second time round, and tweets 2 the third time round. So let's have a look and see if that works. Hi everyone comes up first. Excellent. I love cornflakes. And then night night. Brilliant. I hope you managed something like that. Now, extra bonus points for you if you realized that in our Twitter program, as we've mentioned, we don't necessarily know how many tweets there are going to be. So what we can do is change this 3 here to, as we saw in the arrays video, we can use tweets.length to give us the number of tweets in the array. So tweets.length at the moment is 1, 2, 3. But the great advantage of the code as it is now is that I could add a 4th tweet. Let's say sweet dreams. Oh, and I forgot my semicolon there as well. And then without updating this code at all, it will now display, with any luck, all 4 tweets. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So that's how we loop through an array with a for loop. And that is a really useful thing to be able to do with pretty much any web app or website that we're working on. Little final challenge for you then. Can you change this code so that instead of alerting all of the tweets, it displays each of them on a separate line? Go for it. All right, I hope you managed that. Not that easy, but not too tricky either. Let's create a div for our tweets, which I'll give an ID of tweet div. And then what I'm going to do is create a variable called tweet string, which is going to hold the HTML for my tweets. And then at the very end, I'll update the tweet div ID to have the content of tweet string. So each time we go through the loop, I'm going to take tweet string and I'm going to set it equal to whatever it was before. So tweet string. And then I'm just going to remember that I've got the equals incorrectly placed there. So that's var tweet string. So we're taking tweet string and we're setting it equal to whatever it was before plus, and we're going to need a paragraph tag and then the tweet item itself. So tweets I, and then we'll close the paragraph tag. So this will add a paragraph containing the new tweet to TweetString. And finally, when we're done, I'm going to take my tweet div and add the HTML to it. So document.getElementById. The ID is tweet div. And we want to set the inner HTML of that to be equal to TweetString. All right, let's take a look. Oh, okay. Now this is good. I've got everything that I wanted and it's on separate lines, but I've got this interesting undefined up here. So have a quick moment to think about why we might have this undefined at the top there. Did you get it? It's because even though we've created the variable TweetString, we haven't set it equal to anything. So at the moment, when we define it, it's equal to undefined because it's not been set equal to anything. So the first time we do this, we're taking TweetString and we're setting it equal to TweetString, which doesn't have any value. So that's why we've got this weird undefined at the very beginning there, and then we're adding other stuff to it. So the lesson from that is you should always give your variables a value, even if it's just an empty string. So this tells JavaScript that we're going to start off with an empty string and then we're going to add some information to it later on. So if we now run that again, we should find that the undefined disappears. Great, I hope you managed to do most of that by yourself, and I hope you're beginning to see the power that we can get by combining for loops and arrays for displaying large amounts of data in our websites. Good stuff. Now, as I mentioned, there are two types of loops, and we've looked at for loops here, but actually my favorite type of loop is a while loop, and we'll see how that differs and why we might use each different type in the next video.